Okay, now that you have completed the online quiz, hopefully you successfully completed the online quiz, let's get to into the lesson for the private sector. Now, the private sector is the business activity is owned, financed, and controlled by private individuals. So, if you look at maybe your workplace, you would know that a lot of the of places in the hospitality industry are owned by private individuals, and they could be sole traders, partnerships, private limited companies, public limited companies, cooperatives, franchises, or charities. So there's a variety of people who can actually own a private business. The objectives of the private sector are, firstly, profit. Obviously, they want to make some money, otherwise, you can't exist. Survival, uh, share prices, so that it's competitive on the market, social issues, so there's a lot of corporate social responsibility going on within the private sector and what businesses do and don't do and why the reasons behind why they're doing it. Obviously, you want market power as well, and also the more you're seen in the market, the bigger your market share, the better it is for you and the better your survival then as well. Sales and sales revenue, efficiency, quality and innovation. So the private sector is the sector that is known for innovation, especially image and reputation. As you know, especially if you're a small business within tourism or hospitality, if your reputation suffers, your business suffers, and word of mouth is one of the strongest marketing tools ever. It can make or break you as well. The environment, and finally satisfying the customers as well. So if you look at this and if you look at your workplace or places you have stayed at before when you've been on holiday, I'm sure you recognize some of these issues and some of these things, and that a lot of businesses obviously live for them as well, because otherwise the survival rate is not very big for them. Now, they could be, if you look at them in tourism, they could be accommodation providers like bed and breakfast, hotels, hostels, people like that, restaurants, insurance companies, and travel companies. They could be business travel agents who make travel and accommodation arrangement for commercial customers, for example. Or other travel agencies, leisure travel agencies as well. Then also you've got industry groups who obviously provide services. So if you think about it, you've got the World Tourism Organization, you've got APTA, IATA, ATO, all these people are obviously part of the private sector there as well, who of course work together with the public sector, but I'm going to go into that a bit later. Conference venues have facilities and services to business organizations, and obviously, you also have your visitor attractions there as well. Now, looking at the role of the private sector has always been very important for the tourism industry, because most of the business within the industry are privately owned. Of course, government policies are vital for the private sector, and they obviously have to encourage the private sector to want to invest and to want uh, in, to be encouraged to do things as well. And these areas, for example, are um, building and managing tourist facilities. So they have to be there. The facilities have to be available in all the places that are interesting for tourists. If you don't have restaurants or hotels in a destination, how are you going to attract people who are staying there for 1 week, 2 weeks, or over a long weekend? Um, Also, you've got to they have to assure collective responsibility for laying down industry standards, ethics, and fair practices. And you all know that you all work in the hospitality industry, and you know what the standards are. Whether it's a rating system, whether it's health and safety, food hygiene, or any of these things. It's vital to involve the local community, and that the public sector, so the government, is involved in this. Um, and that these people are involved in projects that relate to tourism, and that it's ensured that they understand the benefits that tourism bring, and that the public is involved in um, in seeing the benefits of tourism as well, not just seeing the negative side of it. Obviously, the private sector should also undertake industry training and manpower development for achieving excellence in quality of services. So again, there are projects running that are offered by the local councils, for example, and the private sector gets involved in this. As I said before, it's very often it's a one-man operation or two-people operation, and running a bed and breakfast is very time-consuming. But there should be a way for these people to have access to training programs as well. Then, obviously, the private sector should participate in the preparation of investment guidelines and marketing strategies as well. So the government has to make sure that the private sector is included in this. It has to facilitate safety and security of tourists. Of course, again, bad press hampers your reputation, ensuring preservation and protection of tourist attractions, and finally endeavoring to promote tourism on a sustained and long-term perspective. And we learned before that looking at tourism in a short-term and non-sustainable way doesn't work, and there are enough examples of this not working. Now, obviously, the private sector is, as the last point says, is very much involved in sustainable tourism development. And I don't know if you look at this, if you've ever heard of this, but this is the blue flag, and you have the blue flag beaches, and it's the blue flag is an eco label that is awarded to almost 3,500 beaches and marinas in 41 countries. The question is now, is it just a marketing tool, or is it actually a great tool to ensure that the water quality is great? That's a question that you might want to look at yourselves, think about yourselves as well. This whole program is owned and run by the Foundation for Environmental Education, the FEE. It looks at the water quality, environmental management, what is being done to make sure that the beaches are clean, what educational information is given, or what education is given as well to people when they're there, and what information is available at the beaches as well. So are there any big boards with information about the beaches, about safety, about safe lifeguards, people like that. Obviously, there is financial incentive behind that, and that is obviously for the for direct tourism investment. It reinforces environmental legislations and regulations. It helps the voluntary initiatives as well, encourages these to, I don't know, get people together to pick up the rubbish, look after the seashores and things, and the marinas as well. And obviously, it's information for public, tour operators, and decision makers. So, of course, if you're a tour operator and you want people to go to certain destinations, if you tell them that there are blue flag beaches available which guarantee that the water is clean and is safe and there's a lifeguard there, of course people are more likely to go to these beaches as well. So this is where again the private sector helps with sustainable development. Obviously, people like restaurants and hoteliers, restaurateurs and hoteliers, they can promote this as well, and promote that they are on the blue flag beaches, and they get involved in this as well, and especially in the education side. Now there are some examples of 2010 blue flag beaches. So you've got, for example, Southport in Wales, Whitby, Brighton, Poole, Littlehampton. And the 2011 beaches will actually be announced a bit later as well. Now, as I said before, there is a need for public and private sector cooperation. It's in order to achieve sustainable tourism development. Obviously, the public sector, the government makes the rules and policies and needs to involve the private sector and needs to consult with the private sector as well. So it has to make these rules and policies in consultation with the private sector. Also, you have to achieve community involvement. The private sector is really within the community. You have, for example, the hospitality associations. You've got the pressure groups. You've got environmental groups as well, and you've got community groups. And if they are all involved in the private sector, obviously they can then be involved within the public sector, and maybe some of the decision making as well. For example, when the South Downs from that go from Eastbourne over to Winchester, they've only just been made a national park. The problem was that there were issues with the boundaries and there were a lot of public consultations. So obviously the private sector was involved with hotels and bed and breakfasts in the villages and saying why are we not part of the national park, but other villages are part of the national park. Obviously the communities were involved saying again, the same thing. Why are we not part? But this village next door is part of the national park, and discussing all the issues, pros and cons surrounding the making the South Downs a national park. Obviously, this all came along with the public sector as well, with the government, who ultimately made the decision of the boundaries and changed the boundaries 3 or 4 times before the South Downs finally became a national park. And obviously, you have to achieve long-term goals. And again, that comes back to community involvement, business involvement. If you don't involve the business, you can't achieve long-term goals as the government. If you don't have the backing from the private sector, you are set up to fail. Now, very often the distinction between the two sectors is blurred because they do work together so closely as well. And as it says, some bodies are created from public and private sector organizations. So you've got things like destination management organizations provide marketing help for their members. So, for example, when I used to work for Eastborough Council, yes, the council had set up this group, Tourism East Sussex. However, which is a government group. However, the people within this group were private companies because there were attractions, destinations, hoteliers, restaurateurs, and people like that. So yes, the umbrella organization was the council, but the people within were then the businesses in the private sector. I know this is to sum up, and I know this is quite a short lesson, but you've also had the quiz to do. To sum up, customers in the industry and from the general public obviously demand products and services from travel and tourism organizations. We know that. We travel somewhere, we ask organizations to help us. We stay in hotels and restaurants. Organizations are either from the public or the private sectors, and obviously often the two sectors combine to provide services. As I said, I just used the destination management or destination marketing example there as well. Okay, now this is just a bit of the bibliography there as well, and just to go back one, your homework is in preparation for next week, where we are going to talk about impacts of tourism. So what I want you to do is just to think about going on holiday and what impacts tourism can have on destinations and what benefits it can bring as well. So in this homework, you can actually see that I've distinguished between impacts that are negative and benefits that are positive. So write your ideas down and be ready to share your thoughts with the class. We're gonna go through this, and then next when I see you next week. So again, just a bibliography, and that is the end for today.